Unfortunately, they were all off. Nobody is manning the counters back at the planning department, so stay okay.
Okay.
Now go ahead.
Thank you, Larry. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I do look forward to just being able to have a conversation with you. I wasn't sure what your normal protocol is, but I'm much more comfortable having a dialogue than listening to myself talk for 30 minutes. So if you would help me and ask questions, I would appreciate that and look forward to that. So really what I want to do today is talk a little bit about what's going on with the update of the Humboldt Bay Area Plan, because there are a lot of things that are currently happening right now. There's a lot of things that are going to come together in time, and I just want to talk a little bit about those and tell you the progress on those. Obviously, one of those is sea level rise, and we are currently working on not only we finished the process of identifying what the risk hazards are, but now really trying to develop a little bit of a response to that. We're also working, and tsunami inundation is a big topic that is really starting to gain a little bit of momentum. Probably the more important thing for us all is talking about what we're doing with the land use maps and updating those. And I want to talk about that with a great degree of detail. And then we are in the process of preparing an EIR for a wastewater treatment plant and using the existing Samoa outfall, or the harbor district's now outfall. And so I'll update you on where we are with that. And then one of the things that will probably come up today, if I don't talk about it, the questions will get asked, is what's going on with the utilities. And there is a growing understanding that there is a need to address things a little differently than perhaps we have traditionally seen them. So sea level rise, I'm not here to try to convince you that the sea level is rising. I'm not trying to convince you that the polar ice caps are melting, but we do have at least a mixed idea within the scientific community that is something that we should be looking at and determining what we need to do from a land use and zoning standpoint. And so we are very much in the process of looking at that and planning for that in the event that it does happen. One, so that we have a strategy to respond to it for existing development that may be affected, and two, so that we can help new development avoid the pitfalls of being in the way of that. The really good news, well, our starting point in this strategy basically is to protect existing development for as long as possible. Existing development and uses, because maybe not so much on the Samoa Peninsula, maybe not so much affecting the harbor, but there are a lot of ag lands surrounding Humboldt Bay that would be very much at risk. In fact, they're at risk right now because of declining dikes and levees protecting them. So we see it as something that is very important to address and to protect the existing uses that are in place for as long as possible to have strategies for accomplishing that. The good news for the Samoa Peninsula is that there is not a lot of risk being anticipated with sea level rise, and I truly apologize for the size of this map. I was so excited when I was putting this together, and I got things sized just right and was happy with it, and then I went to hit the format, and everything changed. My technological inadequacy, but you can see that there's a little bit of area here, which I believe is right below where we're at, right down here, that would be subject to us.
That would be us.
And then some areas that are down towards Fairhaven that would be subject to some inundation. And then some areas up around Samoa that would be subject to inundation. But you can see much of the rest of the area around Humboldt Bay would be far more susceptible. So, sea level rise, yes?
Real quick, I can't read the code. I see the yellow square and then a square that
yes, this is the yellow is 1 meter sea level rise.
Okay.
And then the other thing that this shows that really doesn't show up well is the California Coastal Commission's permit jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
And let me just,
Area that goes pretty far inland, I can't read what it says there, it's not freshwater, is it?
this area here, yeah.
Is it freshwater?
So one of the things that we're struggling with with respect to designing a response to sea level rise is that, and Lisa Haney, who's working in our office, is here today, so she can correct me and help me get the numbers right. But at least 60% or more of the area that's around the bay is actually within Coastal Commission retained jurisdiction. That means even if we want to do something to protect existing development against sea level rise, we need the Coastal Commission to agree that that's the right thing to do, because they're the ones who will be issuing the permit for it. So that is a real ongoing struggle for us right now, is trying to design a strategy that we can work with the Coastal Commission to have them implement the local coastal program in responding to sea level rise, because if they just do it based upon the Coastal Act, we may not be able to do some of the things that we believe are necessary to protect existing development. Yes, sir?
So, my preference represents that the presentation of sea level rises that passes at 3 to 5 feet over the and you can see where it's going to go, like the freshwater, the places where there are reeds, you know, along there. That's the old bay, it's going to be the bay again. What he's done that other people haven't. What happens when you have a 100-year flood event on top of the sea level rise? And what he shows is the water goes halfway across the road. You know, all the places there get flooded. And that's also, and we're going to get more global weirding that's going to create bigger rainfalls.
So to that point, that's a great point, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but we can go as deep as you'd like to go, is that one of the things we're seeing now with king tides is we're starting to see roads get flooded. We're starting to see areas that are suffering from what we call a nuisance inundation. That really will start to reflect what could happen more and more in the future on an infrequent basis. So when you think about what happens now in relationship to sea level rise, plus the normal processes of the tide that are going on anyway, yes, you've got to take into account not only the static water surface elevation increase, but also the tides on top of that.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So you do all this work and then you have to go to the Coastal Commission to get approval. Why doesn't the county petition the state or the Coastal Commission or whatever, whoever they have to petition, to get a carve out so we deal with our own coastal issues, like San Francisco and LA or whoever?
That is a really good question. It's fraught politically, but it's a good question, and it may be something that in some form of that we are going to be petitioning the Coastal Commission as part of the presentation we give to them, that they do become participants of the LCP so that they implement the LCP. The struggle is with San Francisco is that there was a pre-existing district there that I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's like the Bay Area Lands Commission or something like that, and they have responsibility for the bay. When the Coastal Commission was formed, the Coastal Commission didn't supersede that remained in place. Pre-existing, right. And so that may be true in Long Beach too, I'm not entirely certain about that. But like the harbor has a certain amount of carve out for jurisdiction, but this really has to do with the old traditional mudflats.
But the harbor still has to petition the Coastal Commission. Don't they, Larry, in order to get approval?
We do.
Yep.
And are you working with the cities along with your own organization?
We have been coordinating with the cities and talking to them about strategy and approach, because one of the things that is very important to consider here is that, you know, if Arcata does something up here and the county does something different in here
and Eureka does something in here, and there's holes or they're different, and it's not a unified approach in terms of protecting, then the sea level rise is still going to find the path of least resistance and result in flooding and inundation regardless. So we do have to have a coordinated approach.
And Eureka's approach is really armoring, and Arcata's approach is armoring, and that's pretty much it. Thank you.
So, and part of the struggle, and this is what we're actually trying to take that basic approach, say we want to protect what's existing for as long as we possibly can. And then where we hope to gain traction with the Coastal Commission is to say, yeah, we realize that that may not be a good 200-year plan. So we may need to add to that the steps involved in what happens after that. What is a graceful retreat if we have to? I hope we don't. But if we have to, do we have a plan for that? And that's part of what we're trying to negotiate with the Coastal Commission. And frankly, one of the things that's interesting, and all of you who have been involved in policy development will recognize this, is that this is such a new topic that the Coastal Commission is still changing and morphing in their understanding of it. Yes, sir.
Does it appear that the freeway between Ridge and Arcata can have to be raised? Is that an assumption that's already been made?
That has been discussed. And the thing that is not resolved, because the policy decision has not been kind of made yet, is does that function as a dike or does it function as a causeway? And what's that?
I mean, I understand that causeway is used for travel, but
Causeway would allow the water to go back and forth underneath it.
okay.
It is.
Yeah, John, nice to see you. Been here for a long time, 60 years clearly that I remember here. We had team guys that did the same thing that they are doing now, years and years. That's when the tight gates we fail, or we have a levee failure that we fix. So, is the county actively pursuing what I think is probably, if not the first priority, but in grouping the first priorities, which is a legislative agenda to rebuild our levees and dikes and our floodgates?
So rebuilding the levees and the dikes is the first line of defense for sea level rise. And we can debate sea level rise all we want, but the fact of the matter is whether you believe in sea level rise or not, fixing the dikes still has to be a priority. We know that they're in horrible condition. We know they have to be addressed. So regardless of what side of the sea level rise dialogue you fall on, that should be a win-win.
Well, I'm thinking in more terms of the act, every year the county has their lobbyists, you come up with legislative agenda. A priority legislative agenda for Humboldt County, we're telling the supervisors this as well.
Yep.
Is you have to have legislative policy to go after continual funds to do this on the state and federal level.
No, thanks, Dennis. Direct answer to your question, it's not on the legislative agenda. I'll say it again.
So the issue of what's going to happen where the jetty is washing out, is that something that's the county? Is that strictly Army Corps? Whose responsibility? Is that your planning responsibility or harbor district? I don't think they're responsible for the land part.
Well, for the
Who's
jetty,
responsible?
the jetty's probably a little bit different, but,
Well, it's starting to wash out, right?
right.
Behind it on the north
So
jetty.
part of the struggle is that would be a permit from the Coastal Commission, probably a permit from the Army Corps.
Is anybody working on that? I mean, you guys aren't.
Are you talking about the jetty?
I'm talking about the fact that the tide's washing through and behind it, the north jetty.
Yeah. No, I didn't. You said that, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder, because how stable, you're talking about breaching and sea level rise and all that stuff, and that is one of the places where it's acts as armoring.
Agreed. Yep. We don't have a specific plan for that right now. That's, and the
conversations about that, that's the first time the jetty's been brought up, but it's not an unimportant discussion, it is part of the whole discussion. So I'll make a note of that, we need to address that.
Sorry, just to
Yeah, if you know something.
apologize, it's the Army Corps has, they've appropriated $5 million for the North and the South Jetty. They're currently doing the NEPA environmental documents and the permitting. The jetties are on federal property. And so, yeah, they're currently doing all the planning. For the North Jetty, the plan is to do the repairs next year. And then to appropriate additional funds, if they can, to work on the South Jetty. That's the current schedule.
So that 5 million is going to be dedicated
To the
to,
North Jetty.
as well as the studies, it's actually doing the work.
That's right.
Is that for the studies or the work?
That's for the work. That's for the work.
The study has been done.
Yeah, they've already analyzed it. They're in the environmental review stage right now. What's going to happen is, and I apologize, I don't want to, they're basically going to bring in, either bring bulkers from Liscombe's Slough or the quarries there, or they're going to barge them in. And the barge is going to go to Fairhaven Dock, is where they would offload, and then transport to the North Jetty. The South Jetty, they have to use the Harbor District's boatyard, and then they would truck it around to Table Bluff to do the repairs to the South Jetty.
Way around. Yeah.
Larry, how much time do we have? Well, no, till what time?
I'm sorry,
1 o'clock?
1:30,
it's 1:30.
Okay.
You want to
maximum.
hold the questions and go to the question?
No, it's fine. I find it's better to talk about what people want to talk about. So,
It's really your, what time do you have?
yeah, no, I'm not here for a while, so I'm good. Was there a question over here? Somebody, I saw a hand go up, maybe not? Okay, so I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about tsunami. We're currently working with the California Geologic Survey to identify what the appropriate tsunami event to plan for is. There's a lot of discussion right now about the 2,475-year event, or 2,500-year event. I mean, those of you know, we normally plan for a 100-year flood event, so a 2,500-year event is like way out there. So like a 2,500-year event goes over the peninsula. So one of the things, I'm probably not even supposed to know this, but so don't quote me on this. But a 2,500-year event is like nearly impossible to happen in the next 2,000 years. Because that's really 2,500 years of built-up pressure. Well, the last significant quake, and it happened to be a quake on the Cascadia Zone, happened in about 1700. So we've got about 300 years. We've got about 300 years of energy built up there, but not 2,500 years of energy built up there. And so they're talking about an event that's about in the 900-year range. And a 900-year event would definitely throw some water up on the small peninsula, but it would not blow over the top of it. And so that is the nature of the discussion that we're having right now, and trying to figure out what is it that we should be planning for. And so that's going to really affect the 2020 version of the building code, because the 2020 version of the building code is going to have standards in there for tsunamis. And the county's going to have to make some decisions about how to respond to tsunami events and the size of the tsunami event that we need to respond to. Yes?
So if you're looking at the 2020 building code, I know there are a number of companies looking to develop here on the peninsula. Is there the potential of those developments being delayed as this is finalized? Once it happens, is it boom, it's in effect, or is it?
So my understanding right now, to take the pressure off this, is that the large industrial buildings would be built just by building code requirements that they would withstand the tsunami event. So they wouldn't be precluded from being able to build. The real questions will primarily affect smaller buildings, particularly stick-built buildings, particularly residences. Do you allow residences, single-family residences, in that zone, or not? And then if you do, Do you try to build them to a standard that withstands a tsunami, or just make sure that people can get out of it? And one of the problems with the Samoa Peninsula is there's only one way in and out, and that one way isn't away from the tsunami, it's directly parallel with the oncoming tsunami. And so depending on the amount of notice people have, that could be a very bad thing. So fortunately, there are some areas of refuge on the Samoa Peninsula that will work, and that is what we're looking at planning. Not seeing any questions on that, I'm going to talk a little bit about land use, and primarily about one of the struggles that we've identified on the peninsula, and that is we've got a lot of vacant industrial land. The harbor has a lot of vacant industrial land. A lot of people have a lot of vacant industrial land that previously was occupied primarily by the timber industry. Some of it's zoned coastal dependent industrial, some of it's general industrial. And so one of the things that we have the opportunity to do is stop and think. It's like, okay, we've lost the timber industry, we've lost the uses that once dominated this area. So what's our opportunity now to be able to put together a land use plan, a zoning plan that is attractive to industry to come to? We've got a harbor, we've got some very good opportunities here, but we need to do it in such a way that we can be attractive and do some planning and some permitting that's attractive. So the big question is, what are the best uses for the property? It should also be ignored that the city of Eureka has the airport property out there that's zoned CDI. And it's my understanding that that was originally zoned CDI when there was this anticipation that there would be offshore oil development out there. And so, you know, we've got this big area within the sand dunes that's now CDI, and functionally we're not going to see CDI development in the sand dunes. So it just kind of complicates things. So, yes?
You said functionally we're not going to see CDI development in the sand dunes. Because of the fact that there's sand there, and
because of the fact that it's under the Coastal Act, it's defined as environmentally sensitive habitat, and so there is going to have to be a weighing of development benefits versus the impact of coastal resources in issuing any permit there, and it's actually very difficult to develop in sand dunes from a permitting standpoint. From a technical standpoint, I know all things are possible, but from a permitting standpoint, to overcome that threshold of impacting environmentally sensitive habitat is a pretty high bar to get over.
Does the Coastal Commission allow that to be developed if it's mitigated in other places?
Potentially, yes, but the question is, how do you mitigate? You know, if you take something away, it's hard to recreate, particularly sand dunes someplace else. But that is the path. So one of the things I wanted to show here, this gets back to the amount of coastal dependent industrial that we've got along the Samoa Peninsula. You can see that that's a pretty big swath in there, and then this is where the airport property is out there. The irony is that when the Coastal Act was adopted, when this area was designated for coastal dependent industrial, I think the thinking was, I haven't gotten an absolute yes on this, but the thinking was that the timber industry, because it was shipping out, was coastal dependent industrial. But that was never articulated in any of the plans or the zoning or anything else. So it leaves this big gaping hole there that we really need to begin to address in terms of what is coastal dependent industrial and what are the best uses out there. And if we've got more coastal dependent industrial that can possibly be used from a market standpoint, then we're guaranteeing ourselves to have vacant land. And we don't want to do that. So one of the things we did is we worked with the Harbor District, we worked with the City of Eureka to do a market analysis. What is the demand capacity for coastal dependent industrial within this area, and also for general industrial? And one of the struggles we have, and I'm not going to show it all, but we have this coastal dependent industrial, And then within the county, there's also coastal dependent industrial out in King Salmon and in Fields Landing. And then we can't forget that there's also coastal dependent industrial within the city. So that all adds to the overall volume of coastal dependent industrial that is there. Currently, there are nearly 1,400 acres of land and water that's designated for coastal dependent industrial. About 1,100 of those are land, about 278 of those are in water. Within the county, there's about 1,100 acres. 900 and almost 950 acres of those, minus 146 acres that are in water and mudflat. So about 800 acres are on the Samoa Peninsula. 800 acres of land on the Samoa Peninsula just for coastal dependent industrial. 69 acres in King Salmon, 139 acres in Fields Landing, and about 113 acres of this area could also be affected by sea level rise. So one of the things, market study,
Is that, so within the water, right, is that, you have docks out there in the water, and a lot of the land is on natural resources where you have docks. Is it allowable use to build a dock in a natural resource zone land, or should you have the areas between the federal channel and the CDI shoreland zoned CDI? It doesn't make, you can't build CDI uses, docks that go out to the federal channel if it's not zoned for those kinds of uses.
Right.
And so there kind of is a dilemma, because some of the docks are actually zoned natural resources. And so if you were going to expand those or use those for CDI uses, then how do you do that? It's kind of a...
And one of the proposals that we have with this, as part of our...
You got to let it rip, Lisa.
I'm sorry, part of our LCD update is we are looking at zoning all of that LC between the channel and the ocean. But we, at this point, we do not have land use jurisdiction in the bay. So we can put a land use designation in zoning, but we don't issue permits in the water. So it's a guidance, but
Well, that's the importance too here, where we've actually got 3 agencies that would be involved. Harbor District, Coastal Commission, County in developing the LCP, that if we could get the LCP adopted and everybody's in agreement on what's happening, it makes it far easier than for the Harbor District in that particular case to be able to plan and do things that are for economic benefit while protecting natural or coastal resources.
And the coastal commission is involved in that machine?
We're working to get there. That's where I'm saying where we can work together. And I know you're looking at me like I'm an ideal fool, but Dennis.
Yeah, hey, John, two seemingly disparate thoughts are going to come together. I was fortunate enough to be a member of the LCP planning program way back when. For 6 years, we spent time helping to develop these coastal plans. At that time, we felt that Humboldt Harbor District in the Bay was going to do what they were supposed to do and make a harbor master plan, and we would eventually become autonomous. The Coastal Commission hadn't taken on the grandiose powers that they had. So when we did the coastal dependent industrial site, there was not just the timber, but that was definitely just an understood.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned the oil production. It wasn't to produce oil off the coast. It was to have facilities where we stored, managed, prepared drilling rigs come in and out. So that type of industrial uses we still think are viable for these industrial sites. I realize that we probably need to do some of the long-term leasing type options that San Francisco has done so that those properties can be used. But now I'm going to bring the second part of this together. I was moved to McKinleyville in 1954, and you could buy 80 acres for $4,000, and nobody wanted to live out there, and there was never going to be a goddamn thing happening in McKinley. Now, look at it. It's not been that long. I mean, I realize it's 70, but that wasn't that long ago. We got to be very careful when we do this stuff with this valuable property, that we don't tie it up in ways that it can't be used for economic expansion.
Well, but that is, you know, high, if I can say this, high on at least the department's priority list is to take into account what do we need to do to be economically healthy in Humboldt County. We have some inherent struggles that other places don't have to deal with. But that means that what we have to do is be that much more proactive to create opportunities, make sure those opportunities exist. And that really is the bottom line of what we're trying to do with the Humboldt area.
What are the inherent struggles?
Location. We don't have good transportation in and out right now. We don't have good highways. We don't have rail. The harbor is fraught with opportunity, but has not really been developed to the full extent that it could be. And it may be one day, and that's one of the things that we want to take a look at and see what are the opportunities and constraints. And frankly, our greatest opportunity is, from my perspective, in the harbor. Yeah.
You haven't started on this thing yet, have you ever?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things the market study identified was that there is a decline in demand for coastal dependent industrial uses, and our traditional CDI uses are unlikely to recover and recapture that part of the market. And so we really need to start to think differently in terms of how do we refill these locations and the zoning that's there. We've seen as a result of that a corresponding reduction in jobs. And you know, one of the other constraints we have, frankly, is our population grows by less than 1%. And you know, I often hear people talk about how fast McKinleyville is growing. Well, even as fast as McKinleyville is growing, which may be almost 2%, you know, that's just not a huge growth rate that supports a lot of development. So one of the things that we've really got to be strategic about is how do we bring together new industry job-creating uses that can mesh in with our existing housing situation and either train up existing employees to be marketable within that industry, or, this is not popular, but import people to work in that industry. And so there's got to be a fine balance there that we've got to work on. Yes, sir.
It's even worse than 1%. You know, the 1990, 2000, 2010 census showed the population growth was like somewhere around 14–15% in Humboldt County, but the elementary school kids, whose, you know, their parents aren't leaving because there are no jobs, that's down 15%.
Yeah.
We're losing those group of people. The economic driver that's most primary for this county is quite definitely the bay.
Is what?
It is the bay.
Yeah.
And if we didn't have it, we would be just like Willis. That is what this place would be like, whatever university, nothing else really unique and all that. And it's the only Deepwater port that doesn't have a rail connection. We have a rail system that actually connects to there, so things can be transferred from other places. The CDI thing is, yes, it's important, but it's not really the deciding factor. There's plenty of land to be used for industrial.
There's more than enough land.
Yeah. So if we had, you know, the ability to get stuff out, and we would be a land bridge, as it said. And the roads thing, the roads are all built on stagecoach roads. These are the oldest roads, so they're not going to take big trucks. And they failed, you know, was it a year ago that, you know, you can get in and out of the county, you know, it was so bad. But they're all, you know, steep things like $2.99 and all the rest of it. Rail is the saving it for the future. And you talk environmentally, it's the way to go. 1,900 trucks a day come into Humboldt County. Think of the pollution of that. 1,900 a day.
Wear and tear.
Most of those will go away once you have rail coming into here, right? And this 130 miles to go to Red Bluff, something like that can be done. You probably go along somewhere just north of Highway 36. Much better than 299 and all that area. It's a flatter way to go. When 299 is closed down, 36 is one of your ways to do it. Right. So that is the economic driver for Humboldt County. And I'll tell you from personal experience that I was one of the founding directors of the Humboldt Watershed Council, helping Charles Hurwitz out here. The weaker we become socially and politically and economically, the more likely you're going to have Charles Hurwitz's come into the county and rape us in some way, like take our natural resources and not give us anything, we're going to get away with it. So all this stuff is related. We want to keep our county what it is, and all has to be.
One of the things, and I'm not going to talk about this other than this today, but it is we're working currently on updating the housing element right now. And normally when you see a chart of a population, it's kind of shaped like this, where there's a group in the middle that's between, say, 20 and 40 years of age, and they're the biggest segment of the population. That's not true for Humboldt County. Our chart goes kind of like retirement. And that becomes very problematic for attracting industry because the thing that we don't have the workers.
And jobs that would stay here.
And so one of the things I almost want to say, I'm getting off subject here, I apologize, but with respect to our housing element, it's like, forget talking about housing. We need to talk about job creation. Because if we don't create jobs, we don't need the housing. And that's a fundamental problem that we're struggling with.
Question. Are you, I mean, we keep hearing how many hundreds and hundreds of jobs are being created by the cannabis industry. Are you guys tracking that? Is that true, or is that kind of a myth?
That's an interesting question that is, we're not tracking it closely. We are getting statistics, we haven't assimilated those yet. But one of the things that's interesting that we are seeing is rather than having the migrant cannabis or marijuana
Trimmers,
yeah, I'm trying not to use a derogatory term.
Oh. Is that derogatory?
No.
Scissors trimming?
Well, I was going to call them the trimmers. That often become part of our homeless population, is that we are now seeing more full-time jobs being created, which is a net benefit to our economy, it's a net benefit to
packaging, the distribution, and all that.
Yeah. So I think that is having a net benefit because we will be producing jobs that are stable and where people can live in a stable lifestyle rather than in and out of temporary positions.
When I was a young person, I lived in Sacramento, and their largest employer was McDonnell Douglas.
Was what?
McDonnell Douglas. And they had thousands of people working for them, and eventually they ran into financial problems. And they went under, and they had to really draw back. And as a result, there were thousands of people out of work in Sacramento. It took them 10 years to come out of that. And the way they came out of it was by being diversified. Please, do not just focus on cannabis. It has to be bigger than that. It has to be a diversified economy to support this county. The other question that I have you looked at like places like Coos Bay? I don't know how they're doing, but what's been how they responded to development in their areas?
Have not, that's a good question. Next time we cross paths, I will have an answer to that.
Good.
I believe the market study did
Look,
at.
Coos Bay?
Yeah,
Do you recall what it said?
no.
So I don't have any doubt that I've read that study. I agree that that's the conclusions of that study. But the market changes.
Yeah.
And right now, there's 6 acres of CDI lands that was just submitted a coastal development permit in Fields Landing. The Nordic aquaculture, 30 acres of CDI on the pulpit. We're anticipating another application for a CDI use of another 10 acres. There's another application that I know you've been working on with the Fairhaven. That's at least a 5% growth within the next year or two that we're anticipating in CDI. And so I'm not seeing a decline in the demand for CDI. I'm seeing a dramatic increase in demand for CDI at this point in time. And I think the core question is really will this demand, will they actually be able to get the permits? And I think that if it's shown that the county will actually be able to issue the permits and the Coastal Commission won't challenge it, and they'll actually be able to go into operation, then the demand will just continue to rise.
I would like to think that's right, Larry. I mean, I have a pretty high confidence that people submit applications, we're going to get them across the finish line.
Also, you know, it's kind of like you're taking a snapshot in time and saying, okay, right now, we're not having this, so we're never going to have this. And I just think, and you know, and looking at what Lynette's working with the Nordic, we didn't get our presentation last month, but I'm looking forward to hearing about their plans for shipping out by truck all of this stuff. When I know personally that when we had the big squid fishery that happened, that 1-2 week period, I think, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, that it cost them 10% of their catch, of their profit, to ship through Richardson's Grove. So of a $555,000 season that they had for squid, they paid $55,000 just to get it through Richardson's Grove. This is a bottleneck. If shipping is what, by truck, is what Nordic is planning to do, it can be a problem.
But we agree.
Which is a 502-14. The rail is a good asset, but my question is, how much automation is it going to be with this green rail? Because Long Beach is fighting automation right now, where there's no longshoremen on the facility. And everybody's talking jobs. And these ports now can be developed with no personnel except some clerks and superintendents on SSA side. So I'm yet to see where there's that much work available. You're saying 400 to 500 jobs, longshore jobs. I hope that's true. Nobody can say how much automation this is going to be. I mean, you got cranes that no one's in, you got trucks that go back, they refuel themselves. I mean, cranes, trucks go out to the dock with nobody in them. And everything is automated. And when that happens, I know politicians in Southern California, even Gavin Newsom, has recognized that we're in the fight of our lives because robots don't help the local economy. They don't pay taxes, they contribute. And somebody said, we don't want the Hurwitz coming in here. Well, you know what? You're going to have robots with certain companies making billions of dollars. And we're not, there's no man.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can address that from a land use standpoint in terms of what automation will happen. You make me feel a little uncomfortable, like maybe we as people aren't needed anymore by the machines if it gets to that point.
It's happening.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But I think one of the things I want to go back to that Larry brought up, that we're starting to talk about at the county a little bit more, is getting through not only the land use process, but then getting to a place where we actually pre-permit sites for development. So that if there's somebody, a manufacturer, coastal dependent industrial use that wants to come in, they don't have to come in and wonder, can they get through the county, can they get through the coastal commission, you know, can they get through the harbor district? That's already done. And if they come in and they fit within the box or the circle or the square peg, whatever it is, that they can go straight to, if it's an existing facility, production. If it's a new build, they can go straight to construction, because the environmental work, the permitting work is already done. So that's the next step in the evolution of this thinking that we're talking about today. We do want to create an environment where developers, where industry knows that they're wanted. That's part of it. And so we've got to create a different kind of mindset from a regulatory standpoint in terms of what we are trying to do. We don't want to give up the beauty of this place. We don't want somebody to come in and destroy it. But we do want to work collaboratively with people who want to come in and give our kids jobs and our grandkids jobs and create a good place to live and work and thrive. Yeah,
So on that point, John, you talked about the outfall earlier. What's the potential maximum use on that outfall? How many projects use that outfall?
How many what?
Projects, or how many different types of uses?
I am understanding that there is really not a limit in terms of industrial growth for the use of that pipe. That is not the bottleneck that will stop industrial growth on the peninsula. They're funding the wastewater treatment plant's the bigger issue. In all honesty.
To allow the houses.
Yeah. Well, we need the houses, actually, this is going to sound strange, we need the houses to be involved early on to pay the initial cost of getting it started, while the industry comes along and develops its ability to pay for it. So there's a fine balance there, and the Coastal Commission is not liking that at all.
To build those houses, so now.
What's that?
To build those new houses so they will sustain a tsunami. So who's going to do that?
Well, they don't even want the houses served because that prolongs the life of the houses. And then if you put a sewer pipe, this is legitimately the argument, if you put a sewer pipe in front of those houses, what about the vacant lots? Because now they're developing there. So that's part of the fight that we're in the midst of.
But isn't there a problem?
What's that?
Isn't there a problem with the arena numbers that the state's going to say we're not going to give you the money? Isn't there
Well, there's that.
a catch-22 going on right there?
There is very much a catch-22 going on there, and that I could spend another lunch talking about the arena numbers and our need to think differently about how we're developing housing. There was a young lady sitting back there a few moments ago that has come by several times and is looking at some of the pieces out here on the Samoa Peninsula, and she has some incredibly creative ideas. And I would love to see her be able to do what she wants to do to provide affordable entry-level housing. But right now, we're just in the fight of our lives to try to balance getting the wastewater treatment plant permitted is really the struggle.
But the pipe is going to be central to that, the outfall.
The outfall's there.
And the outfall's also intrinsic to the fish plant, and the outfall's also intrinsic to bringing in fiber optic, and the outfall's also, how many uses can that pipe handle all at the same time? Because it sounds like everybody wants to use that outfall for everything.
Well, that outfall used to accommodate a pulp mill, which is a pretty big use. And I don't know the answer to all those questions.
There are additional outfalls too, could be refired, so.
Are they in good shape?
One of them is, yeah, there's a need more.
Let's let Larry wrap this up because it's getting late.
Okay.
Larry, sorry.
Okay, Larry, wrap it up.
Larry, why don't you wrap it up?
Are you?
You had one more slide?
Oh, no, I've got lots more slides.
Oh.
We're not going to get there today. So I think, the thing that wastewater treatment plant, I think, the thought that I want to leave you all with is where we want to get to with the Humboldt area plan. is to develop a community approach to our needs. And those needs have to do with continuing to develop the economy. We need to create jobs. We need to create an environment where jobs can be created. Yes, we have coastal resources that need to be protected, but you know, we can balance those together, and that's really what we want to do. Thank you very much for the dialogue. It's been
I have to say this is the first time I've 70 presentations that